Everyone, thank you so much for being here again tonight. Welcome in to our final session of our first ever staff training summit. Of course, brought to us by our friends at Care Camps. We'd like to thank Care Camps for sponsoring the staff training summit and for supporting COCA and our members in everything we do. And on behalf of Care Camps, I'd like to welcome Lexi. So Lexi, you can take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to see you all. I just wanted to take a quick minute to give you an update from our Care Camps team. We are in the final phase of reviewing all your grant applications, and we are just loving learning all the details about each of your camps. We're so inspired by all of your hard work and the services you provide to the families and the children who need it the most. And it's just so fun to see. We just feel so blessed to be able to help you all in that mission. We are on track to award our grant applications awards here soon within the next few weeks. So we're really excited about that. So stay tuned for all of that fun news. And then also we just want to say a huge thank you to you all for, like I said, all the hard work you're doing, the services and the support you provide, the families and the children. And if you have any questions or need anything from us, within the next few weeks or while camp starts going, and I know that starts here pretty soon for you all, please feel free to reach out if there's anything we can do to help or be any form of support for you all. So you can reach out to myself, Gwen, or Erica, and we look forward to talking with you all soon. Have a great webinar. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lexi. And again, thank you to Care Camps. So without further ado, for the final time, I'd like to introduce our rock star of the COCA Staff Training Summit, Professor Dave Malter. Dave is the director of the Camp Administration and Leadership Program at Gratz College, and he's been a great help to us and all of our members. So Dave, thank you again, and take it away.
Thank you, Ryan, and everybody else for being here. Let me just share my screen real quick. It's good to see everybody. Crystal already knew what I was going to ask. She's ahead of the game. She already put it up there, just so we know who we're playing with tonight. So it's good to see everybody who has been on the past couple of nights. Glad to be here again. Just a small disclaimer before I start, and this was on the description. I am not a mental health professional. So just to be clear, so if you or somebody you know is really going through a mental health crisis, please get yourself or that person the help that they need. I am not by any means. My father is a psychiatrist, retired now. That probably makes me less qualified. So I actually, as I was working today, an article came across my desk, which I really think just puts an exclamation point on what we're going to talk about tonight. But a young man in New Jersey who was 15, came from a pretty bad kind of broken home. Mother was an alcoholic but recovering. He really wanted to live with her. His dad wouldn't let him. He asked his dad and people at school, I believe, for help to see a professional, and nobody got him the help. And his only recourse was to jump off of a bridge so he could be saved, and then they would get him help. So this is a real issue that I don't think we talk enough about, to be honest. I don't know if it happened this week, I can't remember, everything kind of blends together, but I'm often asked, what are the important topics, right? What do you have to talk about? What do you, and I guess the first night we touched upon it. And for me, even pre-COVID, but I think even more so post-COVID, mental health is such a huge issue. And it's something we need to really focus on and spend time on. And you don't have to be a mental health professional to talk about it and to provide resources and support. And we're going to talk a lot more about it, but I just want to start with that and saying that it's something that I don't think we can ignore anymore and just say, well, it's camp and everybody's happy and things are great. And all those problems are going to fade away when they're here for however long they're here. That's not reality. Those problems don't go away, and we need to be really aware. So tonight's conversation, I want it to be really practical for you. I almost want this to be something that when you get this email from Jennifer, I guess, with the presentation, or it's in the, I forgot what she called it, but you have a link that you're going to get outside the box. Sorry, thank you, Jennifer.
You'll still get an email.
Right, so you'll get an email, and you'll have access to all this material. I want this to be a presentation that you could just take my logo off if you want, put your camp logo on it. Feel free. Call and ask me questions if you don't know how to do it or don't know how to present it. And this is something that you should be able to do. We're going to use a tool tonight that you can certainly use. It doesn't require any special training or education. And I really just feel that I wanted it to be something super easy for you to talk about. If you're not comfortable, or if you don't have the words to use, or you've never done it before, this should be something that you can talk about. So that was my disclaimer and a little setup for what we're going to talk about tonight. So here's my roadmap. I know we're talking about staff mental health and during staff training, but I don't want us to forget that it has to do with campers also. Because while we want staff to be healthy, if they don't know how to take care of campers, it's going to affect the staff's mental health. So we are going to talk about campers. So it is part of staff training. It is part of preparing them for this position. So we're going to start about understanding what's going on in the world. We're going to kind of talk a little bit about your own mental health. And again, not a diagnosis at all, and totally confidential. And we'll do that in a little bit. Talk about some coping strategies that you can talk to your staff about, how to support campers, those types of things, and support staff. So that's our kind of roadmap for tonight, and we'll get started. But first, I want to again say that we need to change our mindset a little bit, because I think we take one of two approaches. Again, we take either campers need mental health, or staff need mental health, or just campers, or which typically is what it becomes, is just campers. But they both affect each other equally. And I think we need to change our mindset and say that we need to support our staff and our campers and them together. And it's just really important to think of it in these terms, that just because they're coming to camp to take care of kids doesn't mean that they're completely healthy. And there's no shame in that. When I say anything tonight about not being healthy, that's not a shameful phrase. None of us are 100%, right? And we have to recognize that and normalize it and make it okay. So a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight will make it okay, because people are going to do it together. They're in the same room together. They're looking at the same things. They're going to have time to think about their own wellness. And the other piece that I want us to change our mindset a little bit, and we're going to get into it, is that mental health is not just mental health. Again, it's kind of, last night I talked about micromanagement is a bad word. I think mental health is a little bit of a bad word also, because mental health includes your physical well-being and spiritual, not religious, but spiritual well-being. There's other pieces to it, right? They all kind of combine. And we're going to look at that and look at these different pieces and how they play into each other. So don't get caught up on it's all in your head, right? Or mental health or whatever it might be. Really, I want us to start thinking about things a little bit differently and be a little bit mindful of the way we're approaching it, the way we're talking about it. So that's my first kind of fry out to you, is let's be open, especially tonight as we're going through this, about some new ideas and ways of thinking about it. Nothing drastic, I promise. I'm not gonna evangelize or make you join any weird cult, but just the Professor Dave cult does not exist as far as I know. I have some fans, but no cult. So it's going to be, it's just thinking about things a little bit differently than maybe we're used to. I think there's also a real issue, I'd say especially in our country, with media and messaging and the amount of it and the speed of the internet and the ease that kids today and adults have access to information, and there's no context sometimes. And I'm not going to get too far into it, but the companies that run these social media outlets, there's a formula that they use. And I used to do a session about, instead of "this is your brain on drugs," which used to be the slogan when I was growing up, right? They'd have these commercials with like an egg frying on a pan. And I'm sure some of you remember that. Super weird, not even scary. It was just weird. I always used to watch those commercials and say, why are you ruining eggs? Like even as a kid, I was like, I didn't get it. But that drug is now social media, and it hits the same parts of the brain as drugs do. Same thing. It's dopamine. It's making you feel good. They literally compare social media to cocaine, and it has the same effects on the brain. And they've been studying this for years. And these companies, and I'm not, again, if you know somebody who works for these companies, great. It's not an evangelizing thing, but it really is. They know what they're doing, and they know how they want to affect people's behavior, because ultimately it comes down to want them to do something, right? These don't exist just for the sake of them existing, and they want us to connect and whatever it is. They want us to buy something ultimately. They want us to buy into something. They want us to buy something. They want a message to get across, whatever it is, right? It's why there's advertising. It's why sometimes even when you just think of something, it shows up on your feed, right? They know what they're doing. They have a lot of information. And we just need to be aware of that, of all of these things that are playing into it. And then you add on school pressures and work pressures and family pressure. And there's a lot going on in people's worlds. And we have to just be aware of all of it. So I'm going to start with adults. So this is 2020. It's really the most recent I could find. I think they're a little bit behind on the data. I really tried to find 21 or 22. 21 data was getting there. So 2020, still pretty good indication. I don't believe it's gotten much better since 2020. Right, they did this study in 21 on 2020, right? So they call it 2020. Pretty sure it's about the same, that it's, or worse. So if you look at adults in this country, so this is your staff, right? So we're going to start with staff. 1 in 5 have experienced a mental illness. So think about that. If you have 100 staff members at your camp, 20 of them have either experienced or currently experiencing some sort of mental illness. And it could be more every day, right? It doesn't mean that it stays those 20. It's constantly shifting. 1 in 20 experienced a serious mental illness. And 1 in 15 experienced both a substance use disorder and mental illness. And over 12 million adults, this is 18 and over, had serious thoughts of suicide. So it's staggering, right? The other side of this issue is services, which is what I started out with that story that I read today, that there's not enough help out there. 17.7 million people, adults, this is just adults, experience delays or cancellations in appointments. Almost 20 million. Now, when you look at that number next to 12 million plus who've had serious thoughts of suicide, there's obviously an overlap there, right? Or the 7 million people who were delayed in getting prescriptions. I don't know who here takes medicine, right? I'm a type 2 diabetic, and getting medicine or a doctor's appointment for that matter. I live in Philadelphia where we have, 300 hospitals at least. It's every day they're building a new hospital. It takes me months to get a doctor's appointment. And I have a CVS, it's actually closing. It's right down the block, but they can't keep up with prescriptions. I take Ozempic, which I don't know if you've heard, has become a celebrity weight loss drug. My wife and I travel in an RV, and I literally was chasing Ozempic across the country. I could not get it in November and December for something that's part of my life and keeping me healthy. So this issue occurs all the time. I had my first telehealth appointment last week because I had this sinus infection. And now remember, my dad's a physician, my sister-in-law is a physician. So I believe in it, right? I love doctors, love both those people. I had this, the first time I've ever done telehealth because I had this sinus infection. I knew what it was. I get them fairly often. And it was maybe less than 3 minutes, maybe. The doctor said, "What's wrong? Never met this person before, didn't even ask my name. What's wrong? I'm pretty sure I have a sinus infection. How many do you get a year?" "I don't know, 3." He's like, "Oh, that's a lot. Have you thought about getting sinus surgery?" I said, "Well, I've had 2 of those already." And he said, "Okay, there'll be a prescription ready for you at your CVS for what?" Oh no, he asked, "What do you want?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "What do you want?" I said, "Well, I usually take a Z-Pack." He's like, "Great, I just wrote the script. It'll be ready for you." And then it took 2 days for CVS to do it. But that's where we are right now. So, and that's something that's like not so serious, right? Like I could get through it. Think about all these people that are waiting for access to care, who can't get it. And then they might be coming to camp with some real issues. Um, and the telehealth piece is interesting. There's a ton of people using it. I mean, this says 26 million people receive virtual mental health services. Now, it might work better in that setting. I don't know, right? I've never done it through that setting. But there's something to be said about sitting across a room from somebody and talking to them face to face, right? We've all been on Zoom a lot. I'd assume it's equivalent to sitting on a Zoom call. And I don't know if it's the same. So there's a big issue that we're going through, and I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. And it's impacting all of our camps and all of our programs. So I really just wanted to set the stage for what is going on. And on the bottom there's some interesting stats, and they start at 12 and older, and about the increased use of alcohol or drugs to self-medicate when it came to mental health. So 15% of people age 12 and older who drink alcohol, 15% increase. That's a big number. 15% of anything is a big number, right? We're all talking about inflation right now. Just think of it in those terms. If inflation was 15% and not 5 or 6 or whatever percent, right? And then drugs with a 10% reported increase. Again, huge numbers. So just setting the stage as to what you're getting maybe, and why we have to talk about it, and why we should be talking about it. I think you should be sharing this information with your staff, because it makes people feel less alone, and it also is showing them that you're recognizing that they're going to need support, and you're here to do that. So this is something that, again, if you wanted to take this presentation and just do it, you could do it. And I think it's important to talk about. I encourage you to show this to your staff and say, here are all the different ways that we can be well or unwell, and take a moment to think about how you're feeling in all these different areas, and see where maybe you're not feeling so great, and what you want to focus on. And camp, I mean, the great thing, but you can also talk about this in terms of camp. Camp helps with a lot of this, right? So if you think about camp as a staff member, right? Think about camp, think about physical, right? They're going to be outside, they're going to be exercising. Exercise is a direct correlation to how you feel. Sleep might be more of an issue at camp, but even nutrition, think about what you're serving at camp. Think about what you're eating at camp. Are you finding the best options for yourself so you're feeling good? Intellectually, right? Well, if they're sitting at a staff training with you, they're going through that exercise and working with kids. If it's something they don't normally do, especially, it's changing their focus, and it's giving them a challenge, giving them something to go through. So there's all these different areas that I think camp does well in helping us, but I think it's good for people to do a little bit of a self-check-in and to think a little bit to themselves, wow, like I maybe need to work on some of this, or ask for help, or maybe there's some room for improvement, or I feel great, and in all these areas I'm doing really well, or in 7 of the 8, so I can really focus on that one. So just a good representation for staff to think about where they are, right? Kind of a baseline. Where am I? How am I feeling? And I don't know if anybody on this call, but I don't normally think of these things, right? When you're going through your day to day, and you have, I don't know, today I had 7 meetings, and then this dinner, and then this, right? I didn't have time to check in on my environmental health, wellness. I didn't have time to check on it was a good day at work. I talked to some interesting people. I do things that I like, but I don't really focus on it, right? We don't take time to think about these things. I know I need to exercise, so I walked a bit today, but then I also had all these meetings. So when I look at my step count, I probably didn't do enough today for what I would normally want to do, right? But we get lost in other pieces. So just a good way to check in and start thinking about how you're doing. So the next thing I'm going to do, and Jennifer's going to help me, this is a tool that I highly encourage you to do with your staff, and you're going to do it right now. So in the chat, don't do it yet, but in the chat, Jennifer put this file that you can download directly from the chat. And I'm going to give you, as long as you need, max 7 minutes to fill this out for yourself. And you're not going to share it. This is not a sharing day, no breakout rooms today. This is something that I want you to do, and then think about doing this with your staff. And they can rip it up when they're done. They can hide it someplace, whatever it is. You don't have to share this with anybody. But again, talking about social, physical, mental. How do these three things, because it's not just mental health, as I said earlier, there is more to it. And all of these things play into it. So basically it's a rating system, and then you're going to add it up. The directions are right there. And you're going to do this for yourself. And nobody's judging you. Nobody's looking at it. It's for you. And then it'll give you an indication of where you are and where you might need some support. So is that good for everybody? So you're going to click on that link. You're going to download it. If you have a printer right next to you, I'm somebody who would probably print it and fill it out, but you can also just kind of do it, right? You can fill it out. You can, if you're really good and you use your Adobe Creative, you can open it as a PDF and fill in the PDF, but that's high level. You know, I don't want to give a tutorial on PDF right now, but however you want to do it, or if it's something you just want to look through, it's up to you. There's no forced homework here, but I want to take you a few minutes to do it. And then once you're ready to come back, just again, use the little emoji thing, the reaction area to raise your hands or thumbs up or whatever you want to, however you want to represent that you're ready to keep going. So max 7 minutes. So my time right now is 8:22. Let's say 8:30. Let's all try and get back at 8:30. Any questions? If it doesn't work for you, I'm still going to be here. Just say, hey, Dave, it's not working. But it should work because Jennifer and I practiced tonight. We were, every day is room for improvement. And we did that. So we practiced, we rehearsed. So I'm going to let you work on this. The piece that I really like about it, by the way, the bottom piece where you can look at like where you might be falling a little bit short or might need a little help, and then what you can do to get there, right? Some actions you can take for yourself. Really interesting. So there you go. I'm going to mute. It's hard for me, but I'm going to do it. So again, when you think you're done, you've had enough, just raise your hand or thumbs up or whoever. We have just a couple more minutes. All right, looks like a lot of you are pretty done, so great. So again, we're not going to share our results because this is personal, but just overall, give me a brief. Would you use this with your staff? Is something that you would find useful? Would you give this to them during staff training? Would you have them do this exercise?
I would have to have you explain the triangle because I'm sorry, I'm a little, maybe it's just too long of a day or I'm just dumb. I couldn't
That's
get
okay.
it.
No, and honestly, it doesn't. It's not that important. But basically, what you would do is if you scored, I can't do it on the computer in front, but if you scored a 3 on physical, right? So you had 3 yeses, you would just draw kind of a straight line through the line that says 3, right?
Okay.
And then if you had a 2 on social, right? You would draw another straight line. Oops, I was trying to draw it on my screen. You would draw another straight line through 2 on that side, and then the mental, and then you would finish the triangle, right? So you're just kind of seeing where they all match up.
Got it.
It's less important than understanding where you are in each area. It's not that important. The idea, they want you to say, does your health have equal sides? You can figure that out without drawing the actual triangle. If you're 6 on physical and 2 on mental and 3 on social, you can kind of see where you need to do some work, right? And then you can also see by the answers up above that you put, you can translate that to the bottom and say, well, these are the things that I'm really good at, and then I need to work on some of these, and how would I do that? So the drawing is not, it's a great question, Deb, but I probably wouldn't figure it out either. Again, not an artist. So it's more about them thinking about and being honest about these questions, and then seeing where they have weaknesses and strengths, and playing up to those strengths, obviously, but then trying to figure out how to get those weaknesses, get some help, right? Get some support. Does that help? Yeah, okay. Anybody else comments about this? I'm glad you asked though, Deb, thank you. So I think it's really useful. To me, it's an opportunity that, again, we don't normally get. We don't normally get Got it. Thanks, Tanya. Everybody read, I'll read it for you, Tanya. Think that I would hand it out as it gives examples of what constitutes is included in mental health that we might not identify, right? So again, kind of reshaping the terminology a little bit. Great. I think it's an opportunity to have them focus on something that they don't normally focus on.
Can I
And
ask a, sorry.
yeah, go for it.
So just thinking, this is, I hate to say, but this is like outside the realm of what we've done in orientation before. So how would you, I mean, how would you introduce this? I mean, when you think about all the things, and I know we talked the other day about like really looking at what we're talking about, but like when you do something like this, when do you put it into the schedule? Like, how do you bring it up?
So it's definitely something like this you do not do after a meal.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't do it. I take the opinion you don't do anything serious after dinner. Right. After dinner should be fun because they're done. But definitely after a meal. And it's when you think it's appropriate, right? It's a totality of everything that you're doing. We'd have to look at it and make that decision. But you introduce it as this is a serious issue that we're going to address. This is just as serious, I think, as anything else. And it's something that's prevalent in all of our lives. I would assume everybody in the room has somebody that's been affected by it. And they're going to be managing kids who all have some level of mental health issue or wellness issue. And you yourself might be struggling with things that you don't even realize. Because again, we don't take the time. And I want to take this as an opportunity to let you think about your own wellness. Think about how you're doing. So you can get the help that you need, think about it, figure out some strategies for yourself. We can help you with that. And also make sure that you're okay to take care of kids. I mean, I think you'd be very, I talked about transparency. I'm a very transparent, open person. And I don't think you have to hide it behind anything. I think you say this is to make sure that we're all in the best kind of health that we can be in. And this is part of that. It's not just about, can you make it through the day physically? There's other pieces to it as well. So, and again, it's hard to say when. I wouldn't make it the first thing that I did, right? Like you want to ease them into some of this, but you want to do it at a time that you have their full attention. There's no distractions. It's not. I wouldn't put it with in between, sandwiched between two other really serious topics, right? Because you want it to hit home. And I would do probably a follow-up app. Like I would do it where you could take a break afterwards and then follow up with some more strategies. Or if you have a mental health professional that works at your camp or the medical team, speak to this as a follow-up. It's almost like when you have a keynote at a conference and then they do a breakout session, right? To do a kind of a Q&A. So I wouldn't just leave it and like let people leave the room and be, oh my gosh, I need, what am I going to do? Have a Q&A afterwards. Have a conversation kind of like what we're doing now, right? Well, what do I do now? So I found this out about myself. What are we going to do? Right? Or how can you help me? So that's how I would approach it, but we could talk more about it if you want. Okay. So anybody else want to talk about it? Hopefully you see it as helpful. Again, if you don't use it, it's okay. I won't know. But hopefully you found it useful. I just thought it's a really great resource. And it, again, allows us to pause and to really think about ourselves. And if you're honest about it, you'll get some interesting feedback about yourself. And it's a good check-in. So something I like to talk to staff about is I like to talk to them about how they cope with stress in their everyday lives. So I'll do a very simple exercise. Very simple. How would you normally deal with stress in your everyday life? That's the question. go for a walk, listen to some music, write in a journal, exercise. I don't know, how do people cope with stress on this call? Play with your dog. Anybody else? What are some of your strategies? Nobody? Everybody's stress-free? How do we deal with stress?
Have lunch with
Say it
a
again.
friend.
Have lunch with a friend, socialize, have lunch with a friend. Great. Oh, we have a chat. Yoga, great. Thanks, Crystal. Oops. Every time I try and get rid of this chat. Art, thanks, Tanya. So here's what I say. Great. Grounding techniques, talk to a friend, music. So all of these things are possible at camp. And here's what I urge you to make a promise to your staff about. Now, listen, I know camp is busy. I know there's a lot going on. But a staff member says to you and says, Dave, pretty stressed out right now. And you say to them, okay, I understand, Dave, what do you normally do to handle your stress? Well, I usually, draw something, right? As Tanya said, she does art. I'm assuming it means doing art, not looking at art. And you say, great, I'm gonna either get coverage for you or I'm gonna look after your kids for the next 5-10 minutes, whatever it is. And I want you to take a piece of paper and whatever you want, your colored pencils and your paper, and go sit somewhere by yourself and go do that. If that's what you need right now, then let's do that. If that's how you need to deal with stress. Is that possible? I think so. Right? That's to me is simple. And you're accomplishing a lot by that. First of all, you're helping this person take care of stress. You're showing that you support them. You're showing that you understand. And it's a very simple, easy thing to do. And it doesn't require a lot of disruption, doesn't require a lot of planning. Give people the space if they need it and be upfront about it. Say, hey, listen, you're not going to have anybody, I don't think, to take advantage of it. The populations that you're hiring, the staff that you're hiring are mature enough to not, every day, Dave's coming to me every day at the same time every day to go take a walk. It's a little much, right? And there's limits, there's boundaries. But if somebody says to you, I really just need a few minutes to do something for myself, I think you try and do that for them in the best way that you can. So ask that question. How do you normally deal with stress? Because pretty much everything that you can do, talking to a friend, if you can't find out how to do that at camp, we need to talk, right? Or even Jennifer. Jennifer said, well, I have lunch with a friend. Great. If you're feeling stressed out and you don't want to be in that dining hall, wherever you have lunch with kids one day, and you have somebody who you really like, and you want to have lunch with them, go sit outside or at a different table and have lunch with them. Is that going to affect camp that much? Probably not, right? So give people the opportunity to take care of themselves, if you can. And encourage people to ask for help. Now, I know every state has different laws and regulations, and I don't know everybody's particular situation, but if you have a mental health professional or you have the ability to have a mental health professional at camp, make it available. And let staff know, this person standing in front of you is available if you need to talk. If you don't have that ability, you don't have that person, but you have a credit card and you have a laptop or a computer at camp that you can put in a private space, and somebody says, I need help. And again, if it's a real crisis, we handle this differently. But if it's just, I need to talk to somebody, it's not an emergency, but I just feel like it would help to get in front of somebody. Or if they have their own therapist at home, give them the space and the ability to do that. If you have to get them on betterhealth.com or any of the other ones, and you have a credit card, please do that for them if you can, if budget allows. But make it clear to them that all they need to do is ask for help. Because if they don't, and they try and get through it on their own, you're putting kids at risk, and you're putting them at risk. And that is not what we want to do. We're all capable of helping. That's what we do. We're camp directors, we're camp people, and we should be able to figure out a way to get this person help. Whatever the consequences are, right? I get it. Staffing is hard. You're all still looking for more staff. Maybe this person has to leave and go get healthy. Well, that's more important than anything else, in my mind. You might disagree, that's okay. So make it very clear that they just need to ask for help and that you'll figure out a way to help them. If it doesn't already exist, it's very easy now to build into your program, right? Have somebody on call, use one of these internet sites, give them time to speak to their own therapist, give them time to take a walk, to decompress, to do whatever it is, but they just need to ask. And there's no judgment, and there's not a lot of questions because you can't really ask a lot of questions. Just say, okay, we're gonna help you. What kind of help do you need? And if it's a real crisis, again, get them the help that they need. Okay, any questions on that? Let's talk about campers now, because as I said earlier, this is not just strictly about staff. So we're talking about staff training. So your staff, I think, need to know what's going on with your campers. So again, this is 2020. This is, again, coming out of that first year of COVID, right? Don't think it's gotten much better. Some of you might know better than me, but my general assumption is that it's maybe gotten worse than better. So among US adolescents, that's 12 to 17-year-olds, 1 in 6 experienced a major depressive episode. 1 in 6. That's a lot. 3 million had serious thoughts of suicide, and 31% increase in mental health related emergency department visits. And I will say that not overwhelming, but percentage wise, it is much more female than male when it comes to the suicide attempts. It's not on this sheet, but it's what they've been talking about, that it's affected females versus males more. Both, I mean, it's affected both, but females much more. And then US young adults, so this is maybe spanning between some of your oldest campers and your staff. 1 in 3 experienced a mental illness. 33%. And that's just like, that's not one day of not feeling great. That's a mental illness. It's prolonged, it's diagnosed, needs treatment. 1 in 10 experienced a serious mental illness. And my assumption off of this is that it needed some sort of either intervention, hospitalization, right? It elevated to that next level. And 3.8 million of 18 to 25-year-olds had serious thoughts of suicide. And then that nearly half of young people with mental health concerns report a significant negative impact. So they might be getting treatment, they might even feel better in some ways, but it still has a negative impact on their life. It doesn't go away. And then we talked about some of these numbers in terms of increased alcohol and drug use. So again, staff need to know that young people are having a difficult time and are stressed. So we need to be able to understand that and to help them. And again, highlighting that unless you're a camp full of mental health professionals, that their job as staff is not to diagnose, their job is not to counsel, right? They're not therapists. And even if they are, in some states, you're not allowed to be a therapist at camp. So you have to be very careful about, right, what you can and cannot do. You need to explain that to them. But they're there to help. And I'm going to talk about how they do that. But they're not to diagnose. They're not, if they're really worried, just like sexual abuse and their mandated reporting and all of that, if they're really concerned about a camper, their job is to come to you. That's their number one responsibility, is to say, Deb or Norma or Tanya or whoever is on this call, I'm really worried about this camper. They've expressed some thoughts to me that make me really nervous. They don't seem themselves. Their mood has changed drastically. They've told me that they want to die. Whatever the language is that's concerning, they need to come to you immediately. But they're not to, kind of like when I do sexual abuse workshops, child abuse workshops, they're not to question. They're not attorneys. They're not therapists. They're information gatherers. They're listeners, and they're reporters. That's really, really important. I want to make sure that we understand that and we communicate that to our staff. Because as human beings that are probably good human beings, because they're working at camp, our reaction when we read or see something, or I'm sorry, hear or see something, is we want to help, right? We want to reach out. We want to give a hug. We want to give advice. We want to, how can I help you? What can I do? Let me listen. Okay. But if it's something that elevates to that next level, we really need to make sure that professionals get involved for lots of different reasons. I hate to be the insurance guy, but there's some liability there also. And also some human, mostly human goodness in taking care of people. So again, you should show this to staff, explain this to them, and keep your eye out for updated numbers. Hopefully they'll come out soon. So I like to refer to staff, and I was doing this even before COVID, and I think it's become even more relevant. And some of you might have seen me do this someplace else. I refer to staff now as empathy experts. That's what they need to become. Because again, they're not there to solve problems. They're not there to treat anybody in this sense, right? They're there to be really good listeners and really good support. So what does that mean, right? It's really just feeling other people's pain. And if it's not something that's elevated to risk of harm, and they just need to talk to you, just listen. You don't need to solve everything, even though it's our instinct as good human beings. They really just want somebody to hear them and to validate their feelings. I know it sounds simple, but it really is simple. So the less talking you do, the better. So what does that look like? So there's two different types of listening, right? We all tend to do the listening on the right, dismissive listening, which we think is good. It's our reaction. It's what we think we should be doing. You'll be okay. Don't be upset. It could be worse. If one more person recommends a podcast to me, right? Or, you know, my cousin's uncle's brother went through the same thing and they turned out okay, right? I mean, it's who we are, right? We want to make people feel better and find a solution, but that is dismissive listening. It's not real listening. So empathetic listening is, my favorite is the one that's no listening. No talking, right? That's just silent. And nod your head and feel them. But is there more? I'm here for you. How can I show up for you moving forward? Right? How amazing would it be if somebody just said that to you when you were not feeling great? How can I show up for you? What do you need from me? Making sure you understand what they're saying is really important. Getting them to repeat it. How did it make you feel? How does this make you feel? What's going through your head right now? That sounds like a lot. Sounds like you're going through a lot. How can I show up for you? How can I help you? This is the moment where you're not a solutions-driven person. You are a listener. And it's a very specific difference. So again, talking to staff about this is really, really important. Everybody good with that? Questions? This is just a really cute way of representing it. There's a lot of worry in the world. I talk about this all the time. Growing up, and I say most of the people on this call are probably of my generation or a little older. I don't know about you, but growing up, I never heard my parents talk about money, the neighbors, family members. That was all done behind closed doors. There was no Bluetooth. There were no cell phones. Now kids hear these conversations in the car on Bluetooth. They are online. Where the conversations online on TikTok or I don't know, whatever they're on, Discord, all these things, and the news and the politics and whatever it is, it's real negative. It's not what kids should be hearing. It shouldn't be entering their brains. They're not equipped for this, and it weighs on them. If you talk to young people today, they are really worried about the world. They're in a way that no generation, I think, has ever been before. And the question that they ask a lot, if you read the research, is what's going to be left? What's going to be left? Because it really, at times, seems like the world is burning. I used to, before my grandmother passed away, and like when I was in college, let's say, I would call her pretty regularly. We were pretty close, and she'd say, "Are you okay?" And I'd say, and I went to school in Virginia, right? I went to James Madison University. "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." "Why?" "Well, because I saw there was flooding in Connecticut." And I'd say, "You need to stop listening to the tragedy channel." That's what I used to call it, right? Because she had the radio on, and like all day long, it was all this bad news, right? And she would worry about us. And it was kind of funny, but really the voices today are really loud, and it's really hard to cope with. And on top of that, there's this celebrity culture, this being famous culture, where if you don't have a Lamborghini and live in some big house in LA, you're a failure, right? And then your job is to figure out how to have all these side hustles so you can become rich and famous, or just rich, or fake famous, or whatever it is. It's, these are the things that are on their minds. And they're going to ask what's going to happen. And you can't lie to them and pretend that you know. So you have to say, "I don't really know, but I know that I'm here for you and that I care about you. And there's lots of people here who care about you. And we're going to take care of you the best we can." That's the response. The response is like, "Don't worry about it. It's all going to be fine." Because we don't know. And that's not reassuring. They're depending on you to make them, to take care of them, to keep them safe. So it's a fun cartoon, but it has a lot of meaning behind it. I think, okay. Did I miss one? No, okay. So some key takeaways, because I explained I like to leave you with some key takeaways. That staff mental health is critical, and discussing it and putting it out in the open and acknowledging it is really important. Whether it's the tool that I showed you tonight, or you find some other way of approaching it, or if you have a mental health professional on staff who has their own way of dealing with it, just do it. Provide the space, the time for them to assess their wellness, see how they're doing, and then help them figure out how they can cope. And that could be really simple. I've seen more and more camps build what they're calling chill rooms, which are just spaces. I don't know if anybody here has something like that. Just spaces that are a little more quiet, have like beanbag chairs and music and low lighting. They've been doing it at conferences too, where you just need to get away and just need to, not talk. And then some of those rooms are staffed by therapists. So if you do need to talk to somebody, you can pull that person aside, or even if it's not a serious it's not a one-on-one like session, it's just a, "Hey, what's going on?" And these are people who are professionals who know how to talk about some of those issues. Clarify to them what support is available to them so they know that there is support. Address this idea of empathy, what you expect of them, which really comes down to understanding what the thresholds are for when you need to bring this to a different level. It's really, really important. And for all of you on this call and all of you watching at home later, please take care of yourself. Don't ignore yourself. Do this for yourself as well. So all of this applies to you. if you're not healthy, nobody else can be healthy. You know, as a consultant who gets, as I explained, a lot of sinus infections, my father-in-law is an amazing guy. He's a consultant also. And he always tells me, he's like, a sick consultant is no help to anybody. So you've got to take care of yourself first. And he makes a great point, right? If I can't answer the phone when Jennifer or Ryan or Callie call and say, Dave, we need you to do, you know, a virtual staffing summit, and I don't pick up the phone, well, then I'm not being helpful. And same applies to all of you. Your jobs are to really help others, and it's admirable. But if you don't help yourself first, you're not going to be there to do it. So please take care of yourself. And Callie, I did it in 3 minutes. I had 3 minutes today, Callie. But it is almost 9 o'clock, so.
I'm proud of you, though. You keep being your own time.
So thank you, everybody. I hope this was helpful. Happy to take any questions, comments, concerns, debates, anything. Oh, Crystal calls her the Zen Den. I like that. That's fancy. Ooh.
Dave, but this was super helpful. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Yeah, we've always talked about how hard it is at camp and talked about taking care of yourself, but I really like adding in the aspect of that self-assessment, because now I've like going deeper, I guess, than what we've done in the past.
Great.
I'm curious, would any of you try to do this with your staff even before you do orientation and training to get ready for camp? Because I'm wondering if even after they take the assessment, they realize some things about themselves that maybe they need to work on, and you know, maybe they second guess themselves coming to camp as staff. I don't know. I would never want that, but I'm just thinking about, I know when I've worked with survivors before and we're moving them from, you know, being young adults in our young adult program when I was at Smile a Mile into the volunteer role, there were some, you know, questions that we would ask them to kind of try to gauge their readiness for that. And kind of once they went through those questions, they realized, oh, I don't know if I'm quite ready for that responsibility yet. So I'm just thinking about this assessment in that light.
I think you could. I'll answer, Jennifer. I think you could. I think my only concern, I don't think it's a bad idea. My only concern is that I think a lot of this requires a real gentle touch. It was something we talked about earlier, right? Before we started tonight, like it's like doing Zoom versus a session in person, right? There's some, and not that I mind doing this over Zoom, everybody. I love you all in person and on Zoom. But there's something different about kind of the vibe you get with that. I know it's an awful word to use, but it feels different. So I would want to make sure that however you approached it, you still gave that feeling of care and eye contact. You know, eye contact in this is so important, and sincerity, and them really feeling valued. And if you have somebody else there also, right, if there is a mental health professional that could work with you on it. So I don't know, I'm conflicted a little bit. I do think getting it out of the way and assessing their readiness, but I think you can do that with just some questions during the process, some interview questions that you could probably ask to kind of get a feeling for, is this person in a good space, right? Even as simple as like, what was COVID like for you, right? What has it felt like? What has it been like? Coming out of COVID, how have things changed? And seeing kind of where that goes. I think that's an interesting way to approach it. Something like this, I'm gonna like lean the meter to doing it in person, but it's all individual. It's how you want to do it.
I was going to say our training that we do is in person, and it's usually 2 to 4 weeks before camp. We might have more than one, just depending on the number of volunteers we get. But we definitely, I think this will actually help set us up for success, because we can kind of go into it with a plan about how we're going to better support our volunteers, and maybe have some of those extra people to fill in when they do need to go draw or take some deep breaths or go for a walk or whatever. I think it's going to be more reassuring for them when we talk about this hard stuff, when they know that we've got a plan to support them in the moments, and that camp's not all rainbows and butterflies, and we're all real humans, and that all those things are okay. So I'm excited because I think it's going to help empower our volunteers to be like, oh, I can.
Well, then
I
my
can
job is done.
this.
Good night. I will say, when you're doing the, it's great, Crystal. Thank you. I'm glad it was helpful. I would say that when you're doing the coping strategies piece, ask them to write it down and then hold on to it. Kind of like the goals thing last night, where if you can get ahead of them, and like, imagine if I could go out, I'm the camp director, I'd go, hey, Crystal, I noticed like you seem a little stressed. Are you okay? How are you feeling? What's going on? Talk to me. Chris like, yeah, Dave, I just, I really need a few minutes. And if I knew, because you wrote it down and I remembered, and I could reference it and say, well, Crystal, why don't you take your pad and your pens and go down to the lake or wherever and spend a little bit of time with yourself. Like, as a staff member, you're probably like, oh my gosh, like this place is above and beyond. They're willing to give me time. They know what I need. They were listening. They get it, right? So I would have them, let you know. I know people who do that in their interviews. They ask that question in interviews. What kind of things do you like to do when you need a break? It's a simple question. Oh, I play the guitar. All right. So if I saw, Renee at camp, and she's like got a bunch of 10-year-old girls that she's in charge of, and they're stressing her out, I couldn't imagine why. But let's say they might be. And you're like, oh, I'm gonna go talk to Renee and say, hey, Renee, where's your guitar? Like, do you want to go someplace and just take some time, and I'll go play a game with whoever, right? There's some real value in that. And again, I think what Crystal said is a great point, that it shows that you have a plan, that you're not just saying it to say it, right? You're not just saying like, we support you and we'll help you. You're showing that you will do that. I think it makes a huge difference. It's not just, it doesn't become just lip service and like, oh yeah, whatever. It's like the school I work in, right? The school I work in, they're always saying how they'll help me, but they don't really do it. Great. Anybody else? I'm on the clock for 11 more minutes, so Callie's going to hold me to that last second.
I'll give a plug to the gold ribbon, since we're going through all of that currently, preparing for our visit this summer too, because there's a big push for that psychosocial piece, and for us to really have awareness about that as camps. And there's all of these kind of facets of that to think about. So, and certainly I'm sure there's different rules in different states and all that sort of stuff, but that has really helped us kind of put things down in writing and have a solid plan as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's just, I started it like this, and it's not a bad, I'm not, I never say this anything in a bad way. I do think that it's been one of those things that we've just neglected. Because it's easy to say like, oh, we're doing this great thing, we're having camp, and it gets you away from your everyday, and it's so great. And it is, all of those things are true. But I think Crystal said it, like it doesn't mean things go away. They might even be amplified if you think about it, for campers especially, right? If you're dealing with all of these things at home, imagine going to a new environment with all new people. That's stressful. No matter how great we are at running our camps, that's got to be tough. And I think COVID, as awful as it was, brought to light some really important pieces that we can refocus on. And this is one of them. So something to think about. All right. Well, this was fun. Thanks for having me. 3 nights of Professor Dave. Lucky you.
Great job, Dave. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. It's great to see you. I wish you all the very best as you prepare for your staff training and orientation and camp with those kiddos. It's gonna
be in touch if you need anything. let me know. I'm here to help.
Yep. We'll send out the presentation materials afterwards. Thanks, guys. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.